Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Kieran. I'm a junior doctor and a comedian working in Manchester. If you're new here, make sure you're subscribed and welcome to the team. The training program for doctors has been strict and set for ages, but now doctors are doing this weird thing where they're taking an extra year out. And this year has now unofficially been called an FY3 year. In this video, I'm going to explain what an FY3 year is, the benefits of taking one, some of the disadvantages of taking one. So let's start off by talking about medical training. Medical training is quite straightforward. You have 5 years, not straightforward as in it's easy, it's just like a straightforward thing to explain. You have 5 years at medical school, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I know you know how to count to 5, you didn't need me to do that for you, but I've just done it and here we are. So 5 to 6 years at medical school, followed by 2 years of foundation training. In your last year of medical school, you apply for a foundation program, which is where you work for 2 years as a new doctor. It's a really similar process to applying to university, and you kind of rank it, you get a score, and you get allocated a place. When you graduate from medical school, you're a doctor, but you have a provisional registration to practice. After your first year is completed, you get a full registration to practice, and you are a fully qualified doctor. Traditionally, after your second year of foundation training, people used to apply for a few different things. So you can apply for medicine, so core medical training, surgery, core surgical training. You can apply for things like GP, which is what I'm doing. You can apply for other things like psychiatry, obstetrics and gynecology. Once you're on your training program, it's a bit of an escalator that it's quite difficult to get off, because once you get off, it's quite difficult to get back on because there's certain entry points. And so what people are doing is, after their second year of foundation training, is that they're taking a year out called an FY3. So there's a few reasons that people are doing this. The first one is for flexibility. When you're working as a doctor, you're often stuck on these on-call rotas. You're doing nights, you're doing weekends, you're doing out-of-hours shifts that you don't have a choice in, you just have to work, and it really impacts your life. In an FY3 year, you can determine your own schedule. You can work when you want to work, and also it means that you're able to have a bit more of a life outside of medicine. So flexibility is a big part of why lots of people are choosing to take FY3 years. The second thing is saving. People work in an FY3 year often as locum doctors. A locum doctor is someone who doesn't have a set place in a hospital necessarily, but they're just filling in gaps. Locum shifts are paid at a much higher rate than normal shifts. And because of the shortage of doctors, there's always locum shifts available for those who are wanting to work. So a doctor pretty much all of the time could fill every single day of the week with locum shifts. So you can work these locum shifts when you want to at a higher rate, which means you can save a lot of money during this year. The next reason is travel. Having flexibility in your work and having a bit more money gives you the ability to travel. And this is what a lot of people are doing with their FY3 years. So you'll see people traveling around the world, you'll see them going to Australia, going to New Zealand, and all of that sort of thing. It's because when you work as a doctor in your foundation training and onwards, you get 9 days of annual leave every 4 months. So this means really you can't take more than 2 weeks off at any one time. So that means if you want to go on a big exploring holiday somewhere, you can't really do that, and it becomes very difficult. So people are using this extra year to be able to take a few months off to go traveling and to do the exploring that they haven't been able to do. On traveling, the other thing that people do is that they like to work abroad. There's some countries where once you've done a UK medical degree, it doesn't take much for you to be able to work there as a doctor. So namely Australia and New Zealand. So I had loads of friends who, after FY2, so foundation year 2, ended up going to Australia, working for the whole year and absolutely loving it. The reason they do that is because the lifestyle out there is great. The days are shorter, there's less patients and more doctors. You finish and you can go to the beach and you can go surfing. It does sound like a pretty cool life, especially when you've been through so much. You've been through 5 years of medical school, 2 years of further training. You kind of deserve a break at that point. I actually know people that have gone and have loved it so much that they've just never come back. And finally, another reason that people do an FY3 year is to gain experience in something for a particular reason. So for example, if you're not sure what you want to do, you might want to work in a few different areas to get a feel of what you might want to apply for. Because once you've applied, it is difficult to change your mind. If you're applying for something very competitive, like a very particular surgery where there's not many places in the area that you want to apply for, it might make sense to take a surgical job so you can get more experience in that field. That means when you go to apply and you go for things like interviews, you can actually say, you know, I'm really committed to this because I've done a whole year of it. I've got all of this experience. I've done these research papers. I've done these operations. I am suitable for this role. And a lot of people do that, and it puts them in really good stead for applying for these really competitive places.
During my FY3 year, I worked as a locum doctor to save money and then went travelling around the world with my fiancée. We went to Sri Lanka, Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, the Philippines, Bali and Australia before we had to come home because of COVID.
I don't think there's many disadvantages of an FY3 year, but for a lot of people, they just want to get on with the training, especially if you've done a degree before or you know exactly what you want to do. It does make sense to crack on, finish the training, then work. In the grand scheme of things, when you finish work and you're a consultant or a GP, you're going to be earning a lot more than you are as a locum doctor at this level. So it is a little bit shorter sighted, but it does obviously give you flexibility to do things like travel that you may not be able to do a bit later on. The other thing is people applying for competitive places have to do something kind of productive with their year. If you've gone to Australia and done basically nothing for ages, or you've just hung around and not worked very much, they're going to pick that up and they're going to say, what did you do on this year and how has it benefited your training? If you can't demonstrate that it has benefited your training, actually that's going to be detrimental to your application if you're applying for something competitive. That doesn't apply for all specialities. So for things like GP, which I applied for, it didn't really matter. When I applied, I was actually allowed to defer my entry. So I applied at the end of my FY2 for GP training, and then I said, I don't want to start this year, I want to start next year. They reviewed my application and they said fine. It's one of the few things they're doing to try and incentivize people to do GP training. That's it guys, I hope you enjoyed the video and you learned a bit about what an FY3 is in case you're considering doing one. Drop a comment below if you've got any specific questions or follow me on Instagram @AnotherIndianDoctor. Take care and stay safe.